Niger is taking a dramatic step in its economic and geopolitical evolution, announcing the nationalization of a major uranium mine operated by French nuclear giant Orano. This move marks yet another escalation in the country's decisive pivot away from its former colonial ruler, France, and toward new alliances, particularly with Russia. But what does this mean for global energy markets, international law, and the future of resource nationalism in Africa? Stay with us as we break down this high-stakes confrontation. On Thursday, Niger's military government dropped a bombshell: the immediate nationalization of the Somair uranium mine, a key asset operated by Orano, a company 90% owned by the French state. The authorities accused Orano of decades of unfair practices, claiming that while the French firm held a 63% stake in the mine, it had taken a staggering 86.3% of the uranium produced since operations began in 1971. The government statement was scathing, describing Orano's behavior as irresponsible, illegal, and unfair, and directly linking the decision to France's open hostility toward Niger since the military coup in July 2023. Yes, indeed, for decades, France has treated the West African countries that it chose to term her colonies unfairly. Following the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization, France conditions the West African colonies to unimaginable terms.
The Pact for the Continuation of Colonization said those countries were expected to deposit 85% of their bank reserves back then with the French Central Bank under the control of the French Minister of Finance. And should those countries wish to request some of those monies, because remember they were only left with 15% of their reserves, then they would have to submit a financial statement for the country, and if approved, they could only access up to 20% of whatever they had deposited the year before as a loan at commercial interest rates. The only difference now is the 85% deposits have now been lowered down to maybe between 50 and 60%. But the countries are still forced and required to deposit their bank reserves with the French Central Bank. So picture this situation. You are depositing all your monies with France. Should you need some of your money, you get it as a loan at commercial interest rates. So immediately you have a credit with France, but you begin to owe France. This has been going on and continues to this day. So combined, the 14 countries are giving to France cash, cold hard cash, over $500 billion every year. And France takes that money and invests it in its own stock market under the French name, and the countries may or may not know the returns. Currently, for every 14 billion that France takes out of Africa, by the time they finish investing it in the French stock market, they are realizing upwards of 300 billion. So you do the math to see how much money France is taking out of Africa every year. And yet France has the audacity to then look at African countries and call them poor countries. Why would poor African countries give $500 billion to France year in and year out? What really gets me the most is, how does the world sit back and watch this carnage take place in Africa? Where is the United Nations?
But Orano isn't going quietly. Within 24 hours, the company fired back, vowing legal action and demanding compensation for what it calls an illegal seizure of its assets. This isn't just a corporate dispute, it's a geopolitical flashpoint. What do you think? Is Orano right to demand compensation? To understand this, we need to rewind a bit and understand the origin of mining contracts in West Africa. Just in Mali, Burkina Faso, and other French colonies, the French forced these colonies to consent to terms that were not negotiable.
They said all your minerals discovered, yet to be discovered, all your oil discovered, yet to be discovered. France and French companies have the first right of refusal. If there's anything left over that the French companies do not want, your people might have. To this day. They said you will only use the currency that we created for you because you're special Africans. We call it the CFA. There was the Central African CFA and the Western African CFA, same animal. And that France is the only one that can print it for you.
The legal experts will urge that a contract has to be binding when it is entered in to voluntarily without duress. But this was not the case. Orano, just like many other French companies like Total Energies, acquired exploration rights not because they were the fit partners, but because the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization dictated so. The coup of July 26, 2023, that ousted President Mohamed Bazoum was a political earthquake. In its wake, Niger expelled French troops, suspended military agreements, and began forging new alliances, most notably with Russia. Niger's military leaders have made it clear: France is no longer welcome. This latest move, seizing Somair, is not just an economic decision, it is a statement, a declaration that Niger will no longer be the junior partner in a post-colonial arrangement dominated by Paris. In 2024, Niger stripped Orano of operational control over its three major mines, Somair, Cominac, and the massive Imuraran deposit, one of the largest uranium reserves in the world. Now, the full nationalization of Somair is the boldest move yet, a clear signal that Niger is done playing by old rules. Niger isn't acting in isolation. Across West Africa, military-led governments are reclaiming control of their natural resources. Mali nationalized its gold mines. Burkina Faso renegotiated mining deals. Now Niger is targeting uranium, a critical mineral for global energy, especially for France, which relies heavily on African uranium for its nuclear power plants. This trend isn't just about economics, it's about sovereignty. These nations are rejecting what they see as decades of exploitative contracts, demanding a fairer share of their own wealth. But will this lead to prosperity, or will it scare off foreign investment when these countries need it most? Orano has already launched legal battles against Niger, including after its local offices were raided and its director went missing. Now, with nationalization, the stakes are even higher. The company says it will fight for compensation. But in a country that no longer recognizes French influence, will legal threats even matter? Meanwhile, France faces a dilemma. With 60% of its electricity coming from nuclear power, Niger's uranium has been crucial. If this supply is cut off, will Paris be forced to soften its stance, or will it double down on sanctions? As Niger turns toward Russia for security and economic partnerships, the question isn't just about uranium. It's about a new world order in Africa. Will more nations follow Niger's lead? How will Western powers respond? And what does this mean for the future of energy security? One thing is certain: the era of unchallenged foreign control over Africa's resources is ending. And the ripples of this shift will be felt far beyond the mines of Niger. This is more than a mining dispute. It's a revolution in resource control, and the world is watching. For in-depth analysis on global power shifts, stay tuned. Until next time, remember to share, like, and comment on this video. And if you are new, remember to subscribe, as your subscription goes a long way in showing the world Africa is uniting for its liberation.